No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 207. I'm struggling today. I'm going to be honest with you. Can you hear my voice is funny? This is to blame. Look, I have been tortured. I have been actually tortured for the past few days by the tree pollen in London at 665 ppm. And I have like debilitating hay fever. I actually did immunotherapy for 3 years, which meant that I would give myself a dose of grass pollen every single morning because I am so allergic to grass pollen. And the idea is that by poisoning myself every single morning after about 3.5 years, I pretty much can deal with grass pollen, but I've never done it with tree pollen. And of course, it's tree pollen that is currently out of control. So I have my Verso to get me through. And if I sneeze, just forgive me, please. I'm desperately trying not to, but it is torture. And I know there'll be some of you out there who understand the torture that I am currently dealing with. Now, no one campaigns like Nigel Farage, do they? Like from photo opportunities, like this one that I saw on X last night, and I have to say it just made me smile, to talk of men's lunchboxes at a lunchtime by-election event today.
There was the case Leah Thomas in America. I mean, 6'3", with a lunchbox that would have made Linford Christie jealous. I mean,
you can't take him anywhere.
And in just 2 weeks, our special results show will be covering whether Reform UK has made massive gains at local elections, and the signs are damn good. But, and I imagine you knew there would be a but, breaking right now, Rupert Lowe has just announced he will sue Nigel, Reform's chairman Zia Yusuf, and its chief whip Lee Anderson in a dramatic escalation of the party's civil war. So why is the right so divided, with Ben Habib confirming here on Outspoken yesterday the launch of his Reform UK rival, the Integrity Party? So is Nigel a hero or a villain? We will have the great Farage debate today with two of our favourites, former Reform UK London mayoral candidate, but now Integrity member Howard Cox, and Farage's close colleague at UKIP and the Brexit Party Alex Phillips. Also coming up today, the Tommy Robinson Jaylene scandal deepens. We'll bring you the latest. Loose Women has been accused of hating women after ignoring the landmark Supreme Court ruling on Woke ITV yesterday to cover issues like buying gifts for each other instead. Are you hard to buy for? That's what they thought was the big story of the day yesterday. And Peter Andre, this is bizarre, caught up in a race row after playing a Jamaican mun. No doubt I can be cancelled for putting on that accent too. Not very well. Lady Colin Campbell would be horrified. She is up, though, on the Uncancelled After Show, unleashed on this new bombshell reporting from the Daily Beast. This is really fascinating, very well sourced. I've spoken to a number of friends of Prince William that he is intending to strip Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of their royal titles the moment he becomes king. You're not going to want to miss Lady C on this one. www.outspoken.live if you want to sign up. Obviously, at the end of the show, we're going to reveal our Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Union Jackass you can vote for right now in our live chat, and the three nominees include Prince Harry today. He was nominated by Fire Songwell, and it's because of his ridiculous court case, and specifically his ridiculous barrister, Mr. Shibble, but they also referred to his hair, which might be a little bit mean. India Willoughby, nominated by Amma Zeleny, still complaining, just see his posts on X. And Jess Phillips, nominated by Warning Shout, because if she did her job properly, the country would be in a calmer place. Three very interesting nominees. I think it's going to be relatively tight today, so get voting in our YouTube live chat. But now, let's go. So no one campaigns. No one campaigns in the United Kingdom with the sort of enthusiasm of the king of Brexit, Nigel Farage, do they? From photo opportunities like this with a statue, which just tickled me last night, to talk of men's lunchboxes at a lunchtime by-election event.
There was the case Leah Thomas in America. I mean, 6'3", with a lunchbox that would have made Linford Christie jealous.
You can't take him anywhere.
But in one of the biggest self-inflicted political PR nightmares in recent years, the decision by Reform UK's chairman Zia Yusuf to report its best-performing MP Rupert Lowe to the police continues to reverberate. Now, some exclusive reporting on this. I am reliably informed by Reform sources that Farage did not know Yusuf was intending to release that disastrous Friday night statement announcing the decision to shop the multimillionaire businessman to the cops. And I'm also told it's only a matter of time before Yusuf steps down from his role, and we know what that means. But the damage to some extent has been done, with Sly News announcing today's breaking news in the last hour.
To some of the day's other stories now, Rupert Lowe has said he intends to bring legal action against Reform UK leader Nigel Farage over allegations of defamation claims. The MP for Great Yarmouth said the legal action related to claims made by Mr Farage, party chairman Zia Yusuf and Reform MP Lee Anderson that he had engaged in workplace bullying. Allegations, of course, he denies. It comes after Mr Lowe's suspension as an MP for the Reform Party. This was just last month.
So it's a gift to Reform haters everywhere, and the situation is certainly getting more toxic, with Rupert today confirming he is suing Farage, Yusuf and Lee Anderson. So he posted on X, and remember on X, he has massive engagement after being endorsed by Elon Musk. He posted this, and I'll read it all. On the 7th of March 2025, Lee Anderson and Zia Yusuf signed and published a statement on behalf of Reform UK. Mr Anderson and Mr Yusuf are respectively the party's chief whip and chairman. The statement falsely alleged, amongst other things, that I had engaged in serious workplace bullying and had made multiple serious threats to physical assault and injure Mr Yusuf. The statement was read by millions and has caused serious harm to my reputation. I believe it was published as part of a concerted smear campaign against me after I made comments about the party's leader Nigel Farage. I have today instructed my solicitors, Brett Wilson, to send letters of claim to Reform's leader and director, Mr Nigel Farage, Mr Anderson, and Mr Yusuf, asserting claims for defamation. I call on the party, Mr Farage, Mr Anderson and Mr Yusuf, to do the right thing and retract these false allegations. In the event that they are unwilling to do so, it is my intention to issue High Court proceedings. Whilst I have no desire to litigate, I will do what is necessary to ensure my reputation is restored. Given the extant legal proceedings, I am unable to comment further on the matter at this stage. And whatever you think, this whole mess has just sucked the enthusiasm out of what was Reform UK's overwhelming drive. I mean, you used to see that membership ticker and it was going up by like 5,000 a week sometimes even more than that. That has stopped. And I think this meme, which is going viral, is probably the most telling, actually, because it talks about what is our least worst option. And do we really want to be voting for our least worst option? Although YouGov has Reform sitting behind Labour, but narrowly ahead of the Tories, and Farage is heartened by his personal polling, showing an approval rating well clear of Badenoch or Slippery Starmer. The Sun gave him a tacit endorsement this week, and Nigel confirmed his move to the centre officially in a party political broadcast. Watch.
We are a patriotic party. We don't care whether you're centre-left or centre-right. If you believe this country needs a big shake-up, use those local elections on May the 1st. Vote for Reform. Let's take over some of these councils and we'll show you in government what we can do.
But this tack to the centre, and I'm going to be honest about it, the appalling treatment of Rupert Lowe has opened up a gap on the right of British politics, with Ben Habib confirming here on Outspoken yesterday that he has taken over the Integrity Party, although he is not yet officially its leader. So why is the right so divided, and is Nigel a hero or villain? To debate this now, let me bring in today's superstar panel, former Reform UK London mayoral candidate but new Integrity member Howard Cox, and Farage's close colleague at UKIP and the Brexit Party, Alex Phillips. And we have had dramatic interventions from both of you this week. So, Howard Cox, let's look at your post on X where you were just on board immediately, announcing you were with Ben Habib. You have joined this party. Alex went viral for totally different feelings about this launch, writing, so Ben Habib has decided he can establish, grow, and run a new political party. Let's see how that goes, shall we? And after all his slurs against Nigel, he's the sole director. Ironically, it's also named the Integrity Party. I didn't see much grace and integrity in his bitter diatribes on X that showed an absurd lack of self-awareness. It took Nigel Farage and a dedicated team decades of hard work and sacrifice to gain a political foothold. Ben is about to find out what realpolitik looks like. Enjoy splashing in the beginner's pool with all the other funnies. How many are there now? Heritage, Reclaim, UKIP 2.0, that other one I can't even remember the name of. Setting up an alternative right-wing party is the new businessman's weekend hobby. They should stick to golf or tinkering with old cars. And I did actually read all of that to Ben Habib yesterday. You know I do both sides here, and this is what he said.
Well, I love playing golf. I'm not as good as I should be. My handicap should be a lot lower. I think if I practiced, I'd be a lot better. But I mean, if she thinks that it's such a forlorn and pointless exercise, she should not worry about us. Move on, Alex.
Okay, let's do this. Alex Phillips, why is it wrong for Ben Habib to put his money where his mouth is and actually see if he can do it?
Well, I didn't say it's wrong. I just, it's going to flop. I mean, it's that simple. Look, I've been involved with a Nigel Farage-led party since the early days of UKIP. And one's got to understand that when I became a sort of central part of UKIP back in 2013, the party had already been going for about 20 years. It was on 5% of the vote. And I know how hard it is to make that climb and build and become a household name and get brand recognition and for people to start taking you seriously. And the point is, Reform have now got into that position, and it's taken decades of people who have really sacrificed everything. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. It also takes an awareness of the media. They need to be interested in you. And frankly, the way that the rules are with legacy media, no one talks about you until you've really won seats in Parliament, unless you're something really extraordinary. And we have seen, as I mentioned in my tweet, a number of alternative right-wing parties set up in the last couple of years. And if you went onto the streets and did a straw poll of the first 15 people you meet, nobody would have heard of any of them. That's just the truth. And talking about, I know Ben super well. Okay, I probably know Ben better than most people. And I've got a great lot of admiration for Ben. But it's not realistic to think he can launch a brand new party and suddenly it's going to make any sort of inroads whatsoever, especially within the time frame we have. The only thing it does is it detracts attention away from the party that can actually get into number 10, which does have the manifesto that he purports he wants to put into place. So I just think it's, why waste your time and money? Look, if he wants to do it, he can be my guest. That's the great thing about this country. Anybody can go and set up a political party and give it their best shot. But like I said, I just think his time would be better spent relaxing on the golf course.
So you're just wasting your time, Howard Cox?
Hi, Alex. It's lovely to speak to you. And Alex is a friend. I've known her for 3 or 4 years now with what we've done in the past, and she's been very supportive of what I've tried to do with Reform. And that's the point. I put my heart and soul into Reform. I really did for a couple of years, and I got no support really from Reform headquarters in the London mayoral election. I came second in the Dover as an MP of 24% of the vote. And if we'd had 3 or 4 more weeks and Sunak hadn't run to the hills and, put us into a situation to basically, a wrong foot Reform, we would have, I probably might have been sitting on the green benches too. I was that close. But what's happened now is so sad and disappointing for me, because I don't take this lightly. I didn't really want to leave Reform, but I was put in a position which I had no choice. I had to leave. And we all know what that was. And, you know, I wasn't spoken to since the election of last year by anyone from Reform headquarters. After standing as London Mayor, as standing as an MP, no one spoke to me whatsoever. And on the day of the election of in terms of the London mayoral position, not one person from Reform headquarters, including Nigel, who wasn't leader at that point, came to support me. You know, even with a camera to photograph me voting for myself in the ballot box, the traditional picture of that would have been very good. The only person that did turn up was Rupert Lowe. And he actually said, Howard, I've come here to support you. And I know that man for a long time. And I can honestly say that he's a good and decent man. And the way he's being treated, I mean, my particular situation was that because I supported Tommy Robinson's terrible, the way he's been treated, I'm not suggesting he's right. Please, Tommy Robinson, but I support the fact that he's been treated terribly. But because I did that, I got this text, a WhatsApp text from a good friend, I thought, is Richard Tice, saying, if you continue to talk about Tommy Robinson, you will be expelled. Now, how do you have free speech in a situation like that? And that's why I'm in a situation where I'm so sad. And I tell you what, this could all be solved. Because I do rate Nigel Farage. I do think he's a consummate professional, a brilliant politician. I've never seen anyone that can talk without an alter cue so passionately and so convincingly. The man is
also cue at GB News either.
Yeah. And from my point of view, I wanted him to succeed. And I still think Reform UK will do very well in the local elections. And I hope they do, because I hate Labour with a passion. But the thing is, you don't treat people who are grassroots people by throwing out good chair people and all that sort of thing. And what it could be solved overnight, Dan, very simply, put this all to bed and put the vote who should be leader of the party, who should be chair of the party, to the members. And I think that would solve it.
Alex Phillips, do you know anything about my reporting in the Digest that Nigel was not actually aware of the fact that Zia Yusuf was going to announce so publicly that he was reporting Rupert Lowe to the police just before a local election campaign, and that actually Nigel has been pretty despondent behind the scenes? I mean, he's obviously supported as chairman publicly, but has been pretty horrified about how this has all played out.
Look, I wasn't there, so I don't know the truth of what went on. But what I do know is when I saw that statement land on X, I thought to myself, this is really weird. This is bizarre, because if there's one thing I do know about Nigel is, first of all, he's really non-confrontational. You actually get the wall of silence when he's disappointed in you or upset with you. He really does pull down the shutters, which isn't always conducive to sorting things out. But that's because he actually, believe it or not, in reality, is a very non-confrontational man. He doesn't like fallouts at all. But not only that, he's a very savvy political operator. And I just feel there'd be something in his logic, having fought many campaigns. And also, Howard's talking about the Tommy Robinson factor here. It's a great shame in British politics that people cannot just have free speech and parties have to be whipped, and they have to make calculations based upon what's going to bring them electoral success. And it's a great shame, frankly, that those two names, Tommy and Robinson, would actually create an immense amount of fallout, because the legacy media would do nothing but obsess over it, keep ramming home the message to everyone in the country that reform is dangerous and racist. And as a result, they would start hemorrhaging the votes that they need, not from the base, but the votes they need to accrue to actually get above that 30% mark and start making real inroads. And what I worry about with this is something clearly went extremely wrong in this fallout between Rupert and Nigel. I was speaking to Rupert actually the day before he put his own piece in the newspaper saying that Nigel was messianic. And I thought to myself, why are you doing that? Why are you putting something negative about the party leader in the newspaper with Andrew Pearce, who's pretty much overtly a conservative? That's just foolish. That's not going to help matters. And then the situation seemed to worsen. It got more toxic. And when I saw that press statement drop, I thought to myself, that just isn't good judgment. And if there's one thing I do know about Nigel, maybe he's a human and makes all sorts of mistakes, but politically his judgment is normally right, as is being reflected in the polling. And I just sort of think to myself, what is it with these guys? Can we stop filing lawsuits against one another. You know, it's horrible. It's ugly. There have been names called. There have been slander in the press on both sides, and one might say one more than the other. But this is just ridiculously unnecessary. It's like kids in a playground. And I would rather people just grow up, look at the country and think we need to make sure that we put the people first. We need to make sure that we get rid of this lousy leadership from the two legacy parties who have driven the United Kingdom into managed decline and do something different for a change. And we have the opportunity potentially in 2029 for something really exciting to happen. And that is the first new party in over 100 years to actually get the keys to number 10 Downing Street and actually start enacting a manifesto and a slate of policies that really represent the British people. Now, there are going to be people who say, well, I don't like Nigel for this, or Reform hasn't got this in their manifesto and I wish they had. They're not going far enough on this. They're going too far on that. Guess what? You cannot please everybody. But what a political party needs to do, as it's building a machine and approaching critical elections, is look at the polling, look at the data, use a political strategy that is going to harness them the most opportunity while still staying true as much as they can to their core tenet of beliefs, which I think Reform are doing, talking about deporting illegal migrants, talking about how to actually stop the boats, talking about enacting a full and hearty Brexit and using that sovereignty to our advantage. And, you know, you're not going to get everything you want when you open the stocking that Santa's left you on Christmas Day, but be grateful that there's some presents in there for a change.
Yeah, but I guess that is maybe the issue. We're like, oh my goodness, this country needs saving, so we can't walk away from some of these big issues. Alex, there is one question that people are putting to you, which is that Reform should actually be well above 23-24%. Now, this was the argument that Rupert Lowe made yesterday. And I just want to read you out this X exchange and allow you to respond. So you posted, Reform's polling is the continuation of a 40-year-long revolution. The public is innately aware that this is probably Nigel's time. So why is the right splintering when they finally have what they want? But World by Wolf said, you are utterly deluded. Farage has shown he's incapable of breaching 25% in the polls. The Tories will eventually panic and elect Robert Jenrick. A new nationalist party will form under Ben Habib, and Nigel Farage will be back to where he's always been, a 10 to 15% politician. Do you think Nigel can breach that 30%?
Well, he's got to try to. And this is the point. I don't know what Word by Wolf's profession is or what his expertise is, but I've actually been working in politics and in elections, not just in this country, but around the world for 2 decades now. So I actually understand how the system works a bit. And I know how you have to build cohorts of votes to be able to get to that critical mark. I also have some idea of what the electoral landscape in the United Kingdom looks like, okay? So you're never going to get to at least 40% of the voters because they're going to be left wing, if not a bit more. And then you're going to have people who still find comfort and solace in the legacy party that they've always voted for. A lot of people, you know, we sit here talking about politics because we love it, because we're politically engaged with it. You would be amazed how many people just do their duty, go to the ballot box and put a cross by the name of the party that they've always voted for. You'd be amazed at the number of people who can only name Sir Keir Starmer and not anybody else in cabinet. You'd be amazed at the number of people who know who Nigel Farage is, but not a single other person in the Reform lineup. And so actually, you know, a lot depends on circumstance as well. And what's happened over the course of, I'd say, about 2 decades now, since I've been involved in UK politics, is the oft-quoted Overton window has shifted. Some of the arguments Nigel Farage was making 10 years ago, 20 years ago, on the subject of immigration are now critical doorstep issues. You remember when he made that big poster saying breaking point, and it showed the snakes of men coming across Europe. And you must also remember the backlash he got for it. For about 6 months, anybody who even knew Nigel Farage was asked, do you like that poster? Do you support that poster? It was the only thing the media held on to try and embarrass and shame anybody who thought that there was a crisis on our hands. Well, guess what? He was proven right. And I think the general public are now going, he had a point. And the thing is about a lot of politics, when you speak to most people on the street, it's the big themes that matter. And most people will say, I'm worried about immigration, and Nigel Farage has always spoken about immigration. When you get into the weeds of what exactly is that policy, who's going to be deported, how many, by what mechanism, Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, all these other elements, nobody has a clue. And so this is, when you work in politics, you get these things because you've done various elections, you've looked at polling, you've looked at forecasting, you've tried various different techniques. And one thing that Nigel's always known how to do is ram home one big issue. Once upon a time, it was very much Brexit, tied, of course, to the immigration debate. He's going to go hard on immigration. He knows that is severely important to the British people. That is just how politics works. Wouldn't it be lovely if people can have all sorts of beliefs, somehow all get together without falling out, create a magical manifesto that everyone believes in, win 60% of the vote? That would be great. If I had a magic wand on some of the election campaigns I've worked on, I would have used that magic wand and made all of that come true. It's just not what happens. It's not realistic. And I think when you're playing in the big league, which now Reform UK are doing, and they are actually breaching the 25% mark, some polling has them as high as 30, which is actually extraordinarily massive. If you look at the vote share that Labour got in the last general election, it was far lower than Jeremy Corbyn had got in the election before. And yet, because of the dynamics of where the other parties were, they got an electoral landslide. When you start hitting that 30% mark, you really stand a very good chance of getting into 10 Downing Street. And some polling is showing that happening. At the very least, it is showing Reform on 25% plus. So they're nudging into the point that actually Farage being the next Prime Minister is actually conceivable, which is amazing for me to say that after all these years. And do you know what the true marker is? If the Sun newspaper are writing it, that means a lot. Used to work at the Sun, Dan. They like to back the winner. It's always been the mentality of that newspaper. We want to be where the country are. We want to be where our readers are. So to put that big double-page spread, almost tacitly endorsing Nigel Farage by the biggest newspaper in Britain with the highest circulation, that to me is a massive indicator that people are beginning to think the writing may be on the wall. So no, I'm not deluded. I'm just extremely experienced in the political sphere.
Growing outrage that GB News described Tommy Robinson as a boil on someone's bum while discussing the outrageous reality that there is lawfare against a civil prisoner, keeping him in solitary confinement for a ludicrous amount of time. Something that GB News and right-wing commentators on GB News should clearly be concerned about. But what interests me is this attempt by the mainstream media to continue to present Tommy Robinson as a monster. So I will show you what Mike Parry had to say in case you missed it in just a moment. Then we'll get reaction from Alex Phillips and Howard Cox. But I was struck today by this monster, Tommy Robinson, and some of the things he has done in private over the past few years that are now being shared with people so outraged by his portrayal in the mainstream media. Watch.
Good to see ya.
Shoplifter.
Shoplifter.
Oh fuck!
How are you? You alright?
Yeah. Fucking hell, how did you come in?
I just put you some flowers.
Oh.
How you doing, mate? Oh,
Bless you.
You alright?
Oh, thanks.
No, it's alright.
Let me get the wee basket at that
How are you,
point.
mate?
Yeah.
You good?
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Let me get a speed bug up. No, don't bite by me. I think it's your namesake.
What's that?
Tommy.
It's your namesake.
The little angry one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom.
Are you alright?
Fucking look me.
Now look, Howard Cox, Tommy Robinson isn't saying he's the perfect person. He's not saying that he has the perfect past. However, we do have a lot of forgiveness in this country for someone like Alistair Campbell, who lied about an illegal war leading to the deaths of hundreds of young British men, yet he's allowed back on the mainstream media constantly, a permanent fixture on the British Bashing Corporation and Sly News, yet there is this desire to paint Tommy Robinson as a monster.
You're absolutely right. And, I have to say that, I was, that monster was portrayed to me before I really went to visit him. I had to go and sit and see him in prison to find out who is this guy, and why is the reform. People like Nigel and people like Richard Tice were telling me that he was the pariah, the ultimate antichrist. What I don't understand, is what that was all about. So I went to see him, and I spent 2 hours sitting with him, talking to him, and I was inspired by him, what he was trying to do. We've all got a checkered past. You've got to look at Nelson Mandela. He was a terrorist. We can go that sort of thing. Then he became a god to everyone around the world. And the point is, the worst thing about this is a civil offence. Yes, he broke the rule. He played that video, and he was sued by the guy that, in terms of defamation, the Syrian, all those sorts of things. But this does not warrant 18 months in solitary confinement or even in prison. He should be under house arrest and maybe a tracker put on him. That's my point. And it's a shame that it got to the stage that this issue, because I support virtually every policy in Reform UK's contract with the people. In fact, I helped write the transport one. We want a 20p cut in fuel duty. Wouldn't that be lovely? But what I do not understand is why there's so much hatred towards Tommy from the Reform head, echelons at the top. And that's why I left. I couldn't handle it. And I'm a principled person. I still believe in Reform UK, what they're trying to do, but you do not treat grassroots people. And this is important, Dan and Alex, to understand. I've had probably 500 or 600 communications from grassroots reform people, chairmen who've been thrown out, been so-called vetted. These are good people who are dedicated to Nigel. And let's face it, it's the Nigel party, it's the Nigel show. And that's what Rupert was trying to say about him being a messiah. He's still seen by that. In fact, a major London person who supported me in my London election, or attempt to be elected as London mayor, said when he heard that Nigel was coming to lead the party, he said, he walks among us now. He is the Messiah. He walks on water. That was an email I got from him to say that. Now, I don't go as far as that. All I can say, this could be solved. And Alex is dead right. And she's very convincing, Alex. And I'm very fond of what she says about most things. And I do. But the difference I have here is Nigel needs to wake up and sort out and make sure he looks after the grassroots, because at the moment he's alienating too many.
Well, just before Alex comes in, I want to show you both this, I think, particularly egregious piece of broadcasting on GB News. Obviously, I'm all for free speech, by the way. If they want to have guests on who just hate on Tommy Robinson, that's absolutely fine. But I think what my issue is with Mike Parry here is that it's a lot of personal attacks, and I'm almost certain he hasn't really looked into Tommy Robinson because he's a mainstream media guy and he follows the narrative. But Alex, let's just watch along with this and then I'll get you to respond off the back.
Because people at home may not quite understand the context of this. His contempt of court
on 10 occasions
was for being told, you are libelling this Syrian refugee boy in this movie, this documentary that you have made. You've put it on your Twitter account. You've shown it in Leicester Square. We've told you not to play it, and you keep playing it. That is what he's in prison for, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. 10 breaches.
I mean, this is a classic case of where I feel he's such an irrelevant person. I'm fed up to the back teeth of him. He hasn't got any values which anybody could possibly admire, but he's, unfortunately, he's like an irritating boil on your bum, and you can't get rid of him.
Not an image I cherish.
No, and you can't get rid of him. But I'm fed up to the back teeth of this guy. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's all down to martyrdom, but where I completely dismissed him as a fantasist was when he tried to protest to police on one occasion when he was arrested. Oh, you're arresting me because I'm a working journalist.
He's a very interesting...
But all those points you made, Bev, about, Tommy Robinson couldn't really express himself properly, boys from Newton, all that. But he now thinks that he is... somebody who is expressing himself properly and eloquently, and I'm making the argument, millions of people are following me. I find him a blinking nuisance. I wish we could ignore him because, frankly, I think he's an irritant and he's given far too much time and space.
But isn't it, when I was talking about that sign that said free Tommy Robinson, it's like free Nelson Mandela. He's not Nelson Mandela.
Right, Stephen, Mike.
So, Alex Phillips, I mean, I was always told that GB News didn't want to just do attacks on human beings for no particular reason, describing someone as a boil on your bum. But I would argue that rant from Mike Parry comes from a place of ignorance, actually.
Well, look, it suggests two things, doesn't it? So first of all, you can't control what a guest on a programme says. I'm glad to see GB News seem to have got new chairs. Sitting on their old stools behind that desk is deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah, my chair always used to collapse. I know I'm a bit bigger than you, Alex, right? But seriously, my chair would just slowly be collapsing.
You rotate to go,
yeah,
every time.
But Alex, I will just say, though, I agree with what you're saying about the guests. Of course you can't. Yeah. But they only, have you noticed, they will only talk about Tommy Robinson when it's a very negative judicial story. So when he loses, they talk about it.
So this is exactly what I've been trying to say earlier. It's because the frame has been set by the establishment for many years now to make that man the villain of the piece, to turn him into some sort of dangerous, evil, pernicious Antichrist almost. And again, I was talking about politics and the broad brushstrokes that people tend to pick up on. If you go and ask a lot of people out there on the streets, there are people who know, who follow Tommy Robinson, who support him, who adore him, frankly. But then you speak to a load of other people and they've got no idea. They've not done their research. They haven't looked into anything he's said or done. What they've heard persistently for over a decade is this man is a monster. And so you say to those people, what do you think of Tommy Robinson? And they go, oh gosh, not for me. And this has been the case now for so long that he has become almost like kryptonite politically, and even kryptonite to a supposed free speech channel that wants to show it's on the side of the masses, but again is too livid to have a voice on there that might support or endorse Tommy Robinson. And so this is the same thing that Reform is having to grapple with, and Reform can make a decision that they going to have that as part of their dialogue, that they don't need to talk about it, that they want to focus on their politics and their manifesto, because realistically Tommy Robinson hasn't asked to be a member of Reform or asked to stand in an election for them, and at the moment the poor sod is stuck in solitary confinement, so Lord knows what he thinks about it. But this is why it's been deliberately made by the establishment, by the powers that be, that he is considered beyond the pale. Because what he is saying for the establishment is beyond the pale. They don't want these issues to be spoken about in public because they're the ones who have let multiculturalism spiral out of control. They're the ones who have mortgaged our safety at the altar of a political experiment of ridiculously high immigration and lack of integration. They're the ones who know you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And we saw this after Southport, didn't we? Well, so-called rioters, and I've got a lot of questions about still what went on over those few days. They went after the people they knew they could go after, and then you saw the same authorities saying to men who came out of mosques with weapons, would you mind just going back and putting those weapons inside the mosque again, please, lads? It was two-tier policing, and we've got two-tier justice, and we've got two-tier media. And this is why when you are going to operate in the world of trying to actions, you have to be ever so careful about these massive hot button issues that if you get them wrong, you can be destroyed.
Or do you have to do a Trump? Do you have to do a Trump and just say, no, we're going to destroy the system, we're going to take over, and then we're going to find a way. By the way, though, I do just want to ask you about I want to ask you about Mike Parry, Howard, because I mean, Mike Graham, good friend, he has no time for Mike Parry these days. And I think part of it is because Mike Parry does make those sort of uneducated statements. What did you make of what he had to say about Tommy Robinson on GB News?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It was based on ignorance. He hasn't met him. He has no clue what he's about whatsoever. Tommy Robinson hasn't done all things right. But I wouldn't have known about the child rape gang issue if it wasn't for him. The depth of that sort of thing going on. That's how I learned about it, and that's hurt me. And thank heavens, people like Charlie Peters at GB News has told us about 50 towns with amounted to 100,000 kids that have been systematically raped. I mean, that's the thing that matters at the base of this. It shouldn't be about the person, the character. It's about the story. And Mike Parry is one of those sorts of people. And I've spoken many times to Mike Graham. I'm sure you have, Alex, as well, about that Mike, the two Mikes, because they obviously worked well together years and years ago. And he has got no time for the man because he shoots from the hip. and that hip is completely and utterly in the gutter. That's the way he works.
Very good point. Very good point. Alex Phillips, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I actually don't know Mike Parry from Adam. I've never met the guy. I know that Mike Graham doesn't have particularly fond words to say about him. But, you know, there are people who sustain a living by becoming shock jocks, by saying things that they think are going to get them viral clicks. And maybe that is part of his play here. But the thing is, you know, the reason why Tommy Robinson comes up as an issue time again on independent media, where legacy media is too scared to talk about it, is because it feels almost dangerous to talk about it, because it's been banned, because it's been forbidden. And like I said before, the reason it's been forbidden is because the establishment have tried to cover up the sort of things that he was speaking about. And they had to make a scapegoat. They had to find some way of personifying all of this and throwing that person under a bus. That's what's gone on. I'm incredibly alarmed and worried about the fact that, as Howard was saying, this was a civil situation. This was a civil law case. How that ends up being someone in a high security prison in solitary confinement, I've got no idea, particularly when you look at judgments against people who are a danger to society, who are allowed to be released early or don't go to prison at all, and then actually go on to commit violent or sexual offences. It is absolutely overplaying the hand, in the same way that Lucy Connolly, that poor woman, sentenced to 32 months in prison for writing something in the spirit of the moment on Facebook, she later deleted. There was no proof of causality. There couldn't have been proof of causality because she wasn't there directing armies of people to go out and riot. It's sickening what goes on in this country. It's sickening how our judicial system thinks that we're just going to continue having faith in it when it makes these erroneous decisions time and again. We need to be a high trust country. We need to know that when we go to court, we're going to get a fair trial, regardless of our politics, regardless of our background, regardless as well of what we might have done previously in life. We don't have that in the UK, where you can have the sort of double jeopardy. You have to discard all of that and look at things purely on a situation, on a legal basis of the case in hand at that present moment. And what we can see now in front of our very eyes over and over again is actually our judicial system is weighted to try and get rid of anybody who dares question the establishment, who dares break taboo. And yet when it comes to people who really are the dangerous ones, particularly if they happen to be from a minority, it's the softly approach. Why? Because the thing they're terrified about is people turning out en masse on the streets, not from the white working classes, although they are very afraid of that, but mainly from the sectors of society, the communities from which these people are coming from. They're terrified if they happen to put, let's say, an Islamic agitator who's been protesting outside school and making threats. If they put that person in prison, they know what will happen. It's a bit like when you pluck a hair, 10 more comes to his funeral. They are so worried about upsetting the apple cart because they've created this hellishly fragile, toxic situation where, frankly, civil unrest is only ever a blink away. And so they live now in trying to bail out the bucket, thimble by thimble, all the time, to try and stop things from becoming a greater conflagration. And for them, Tommy Robinson represents somebody who puts a cat amongst the pigeons, who will actually destabilise this sort of convoluted filigree of so-called social peace, when actually what it is essentially top-down suppression of the truth.
Alex, that text I got from Richard Tice threatening me with expulsion if I continue to talk about the Antichrist, if I continue to do that, was fair?
Well, listen, look, I don't want to sort of speak bad of Richard Tice. I adore that man. I think actually he's incredibly magnanimous and been very important in UK politics for managing to keep reform going. I always think when you communicate with people, there's a delicate way of doing it. There are ways in which you can have a conversation in human terms. And I don't know the wording of your text. Of course I don't. But it is party policy, because it's such a hot potato issue, that reform rightly, and I don't mean rightly from a moral sense, I mean rightly from a strategic sense, rightly realise is going to cause them a lot of damage if they open the door to it. And so if the party policy is, look, we just can't play with that fire, I'm afraid, so everyone understand that and, you know, zip it when it comes to this topic. We've got elections to win. then that's party policy. But like I said, when it comes to communications between people, there's just better way to handle things sometimes. Like, I don't know what he wrote to you.
Well, Alex, the important thing to understand about this is that Richard Tice actually asked me to stand as London Mayor. I'm very fond. I've got admiration. He stood down when Nigel became leader. All those sorts of things. You couldn't ask for a better, nicer guy in that respect. And I'm feeling for him a bit at the moment where he's sitting with the party. But all I'm saying to you is that there is about probably, I know of at least 500 or 600 people who are in my position who support Tommy big time, who are in the Reform Party.
Well, of course. And as I say, I do think that probably after this local election campaign, we may see some changes at the top of Reform UK, even though they will not be wanting to admit that now. Yesterday in the United Kingdom was one of the most important days for women since the suffragette movement. And there is one television show on broadcast TV that is dedicated specifically to women, females. It actually has the word women in the name. But the sad thing is that Loose Women on Woke ITV, a show that used to be brilliant and used to properly represent working class ladies of our country with brilliant panelists like Carol McGiffin and Jane, and just so many, actually. Lisa, there were honestly brilliant, brilliant people on that panel who have all gone. And on the biggest day for women in modern history yesterday, Loose Women covered, let me show you. Is Denise heading to space? Female space mission, inspiring or inappropriate? Is it an insult to be called bossy? Do we give away too much personal data? Are you hard to buy gifts for? Is there pressure to provide a perfect childhood? What would your dog look like as a human? Benidorm, the Garveys are reunited. Is Benidorm returning? So the brilliant John James, who has been on the right side of this gender-critical argument as a gay man for some time, regularly reposted on X by J.K. Rowling, wrote on this, and ironically, obviously it was a man who had to do it, but he posted, UK Supreme Court unanimously ruled that a woman is defined by biological sex and Loose Women didn't cover it. Why Charlene White? Why Denise Welsh? Why Janet Street Porter? Why Mariella Fostrop? Instead, they asked, are you hard to buy gifts for? What an insult to women. Now, John's post on X had serious repercussions because it shamed the show. And I tuned into Loose Women today, where Kay Adams, who was hosting, admitted that they had not had this debate. They had not had the biological sex debate previously because it was too toxic. And Denise Welsh admitted that she was terrified of cancellation. Now, Alex Phillips, I don't think there's any excuse for Loose Women ignoring this story yesterday. And actually, it's not just about what they did yesterday, although, my God, you have a huge piece of breaking news coming in 3 hours before you go to air. You know what it's like on a TV station. You've got the only show that features an exclusive female panel. You would be rubbing your hands with glee. It's like, this is our moment. We're going to get the ratings. We're going to get people talking. So there's no excuse for that. But I would actually say, Alex Phillips, there is also no excuse for having dodged this subject for the past 2 years because you're so terrified of cancellation. That is the damage the woke mind virus causes, isn't it?
Right, and you know, it isn't just Loose Women, it's all legacy media, basically. It's largely pretty much all politicians as well. It's the public institutions, it's schools, it's social service.
But this is a show for women. And they don't have a trans panelist. You know, like, this is a show for biological women.
How mental is it that it's taken going to the UK Supreme Court to say that men can't go in women's toilets, that men can't compete against women in sports because there's a real threat of permanent injury and death? How mental. We got the vote at the beginning of the last century. We're still battling for equality in many other regards, but we've got access to workplaces, and we think we've progressed this far. And all of a sudden, in court, we're battling to just have an identity, just to be women and to be safeguarded. I mean, it's sick.
I know. It is sick. It is sick.
What else I find sick? I just want to say this. What else I find sick? Right, this was such a serious subject. It was so important to 50% of the population that they can have integrity and dignity and safety and security and an identity and even the most measly form of recognition, which is that you exist. And yet, so many of the political news programs used it like a game. Oh, it was funny. Can a woman have a penis? Can they? And the idiots, spineless, sycophantic, vainglorious, morally just bankrupt politicians without a spine who all they could see was popularity. Just went along.
But even today, Alex, and I can't play you any of it, unfortunately, because ITV don't allow you to. But even today, these women were sitting there, clearly terrified, clearly self-editing everything they say, and all they cared about were the trans people in the country, the 0.5% of trans people. That's all they cared about, or at least that's all they felt they were able to express.
Yeah, but Dan, look at you, right? You know what happens when you go up against these big issues, when you are going to be outspoken, to use the title of your show. What happens? You have to go it alone. It takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage. And if these women
they just don't talk about it. They just don't talk about it. But the thing is, Alex, there was power in having the four of them there yesterday. And, I thought it was shameful. But look, I just want to go through some other big moments of the coverage. Firstly, J.K. Rowling, you've got to admit, so damn cool. She posted, I love it when a plan comes together, hashtag Supreme Courts, hashtag women's rights with this picture, and then said, to those celebrating the fact that I'm smoking a blunt, it's a cigar. Even if it decided to identify as a blunt, for the purposes of this celebration, it would remain objectively, provably, and demonstratively a cigar. So I loved that. Now, Howard Cox, I'm going to bring you in. But as the bloke, I want you to comment on crazy James O'Brien and the crazy mental arithmetics that he played yesterday to somehow make this about the Donald Trump Access Hollywood video from all of those years ago. Watch.
Loads of people who were very supportive, very delighted by today's judgment, who are as disgusted as all decent people are by an awful lot of what else Donald Trump is ushering in. And yet, I don't know how you separate yourself from that, how you make it clear that you wish it was somebody else that had done this thing that you approve of. But as it is, it's the self-confessed sex offender who you're cheering for his attitude towards transgender women. The bloke who really does go around grabbing women by their genitals. He's your man. I don't know. I mean, do you pause and think, how have I ended up on his team? How have I ended up on the same team as the self-confessed sex offender, the guy who boasts about grabbing women by their genitals? The guy that sued a woman who accused him of rape for libel and lost. How'd I end up on his team?
Howard, I guess that's got to be proof that the left have lost their mind over this issue.
Well, they have lost their mind. Isn't that defamatory? Shouldn't he be in solitary confinement for that? I mean, I cannot believe how he gets away with that, man. I refused to go and be interviewed on him because every time I talk to him about everything, because as you know, I look after a thing called fossil fuels in cars, etc. that I've been campaigning for 15 years on that. And he really attacks me on my position in terms of climate change denial. You know, I'm one of those. But yesterday's victory in the Supreme Court was historic. It was absolutely fantastic. And I was so proud of those women who've gone through this process and they've gone out of their way to sort this out. And you get people like that and the loose women, 4 very powerful women in terms of media and on the television, etc., completely ignoring it. I'm not really a frequenter of watching loose women, I'm afraid. But, you know, what it amazes me, they had the opportunity to stand up. And I follow J.K. Rowling. I think she's incredible. I also follow people like Sharon Davis. You know, I think also she's one of the people. And I also follow a certain person called Alex Phillips when she talks about this. I regularly retweet when she talks about this. And she talks so much sense. But the fact is, we've got a lot of idiots out there in the mainstream media, and most of them are left of centre.
Well, of course, because I also want to show you Sly News. I mean, actually, I showed you on yesterday's show the initial reaction on Sly News to the Supreme Court ruling, which was just sickening, and you can go back and watch that. But it continued. It continued into the night, where their hosts were just clearly despondent about this decision. It didn't matter if they were female or male. So this was Anna Bottin on the press preview.
10, and the judges have ruled definitively in this instance that the terms woman and sex refer to biology, not gender.
And the question is, what does that mean? Some very stark headlines, has to be said, in both the Metro and the Telegraph. You know, trans women are not women. And, you know, this is deeply disappointing for the trans community who have fought so hard to get rights that they deem as suitable for how they feel as people.
And there was exactly that same sort of approach during an interview with Maya Forstater, who's been a hero on this. Watch.
It doesn't matter what sex you are, but in places where it does, you need to be clear.
Yeah, so but let me just push on that a little bit, because then you could have some trans women who then feel excluded from the space that they think they should be in that particular instance.
But they're men. I mean, they might feel excluded, but the fact is that's a space for women. And somebody who's a man who wishes he was a woman is not a woman. And I'm sorry if he feels excluded, but we need to have clear rules in order to protect the people who those services are intended for. And that doesn't mean treating people badly or not treating them at all. Men who identify as transgender, who call themselves trans women, may be a vulnerable subset of men, but they don't share an experience with women because they're not women.
And I mean, Alex, it's just astonishing to me that you have these amazing women like Maya Forstater, and I mean, gosh, she's someone who lost so much just for stating a biological reality, and yet she's still trying to have to explain to these presenters also on Sly News.
I've got to go back to the James O'Brien thing, because the one thing
Please, no, you go there.
The one thing that stood out to me is it's been the hard work and the bravery of Maya Forstater, of Helen Joyce, of the women behind Sex Matters, of people like Kelly J. Keane, who has been attacked in the streets, of the women who have been called TERFs, demonised, cancelled, physically threatened with rape online. It's the hard work of those women who got that court case, not a bloody man in America. Misogyny alarm any? If anybody's the big bleeding misogynist in this debate, it's James O'Brien for wanting to blame all of this on a man, completely disregarding all the women who fought hard and sacrificed so much just to protect the safety and integrity of women. It infuriates me. It infuriates me. This is what we battle all the time. I don't want to become a Me Too movement. It's not like that. But it is a fact of life, right? When you go out to bat as a woman, if you want to stick your head above the parapet and fight for what you believe in, you have a bloody hard time. You get the sort of crap thrown at you that I don't think men do. You get accused of having affairs. You get accused of sleeping around. You get accused of being toxic, dangerous, a witch. You know, it's the way that women are treated in the public space is absolutely reprehensible. And when they have to fight for the protection of women, and when they do, James O'Brien can't even say the name of them. Instead, he says Donald Trump.
Yeah. Totally.
Demonstrates the point.
Totally demonstrates the point. Goodness me. I did just want to play a moment from Nigel Farage earlier today, because this is where Nigel Farage is so good. He's so good. And I know some people say I've been harsh on Nigel Farage over the past few weeks. Certainly I don't, like the Rupert Lowe situation. But on the campaign trail, when he's dealing with these sorts of issues in a completely accessible and funny way, I think it's when you see Nigel Farage at his best. Watch.
I think we reached peak lunacy, didn't we?
Yes.
We reached peak lunacy in Scotland, where a violent double rapist put on a blonde wig was rebranded as Isla Bryson, and then was sent to a women's prison. And I think that was peak lunacy. And I think the Supreme Court judgment shows you that actually the pendulum of common sense has come back to where it needs to be. And it was very interesting. I heard Sebastian Coe on the radio this morning saying, hooray. Because frankly, for any human being that's been through male puberty to be contesting against adult women in sport. I mean, there was the case Leah Thomas in America. I mean, 6'3", with a lunchbox that would have made Linford Christie jealous. I mean,
you can't take him anywhere.
But I mean, the whole thing was ridiculous. So look, you know, there are those in society who feel they're born in the wrong bodies, and you know what? We'll be respectful of them. We won't be discriminatory against them. We'll understand who they are. There's no problem with that. But I think the extent to which this was being abused, and women were just not feeling safe in their own spaces, yeah, it's a judgment for common sense.
I mean, Howard Cox, he's just got that spot on, hasn't he? Just that his whole approach to this issue is exactly what you want from a politician.
Actually, there's no hesitation in that whatsoever. The way he actually delivered that was beautiful. And I as I say, I've got huge admiration for where he gets hold of an issue and actually delivers not necessarily a solution, but a rational reasoning behind it. And I've got huge respect for that. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. But this whole issue, you know, regarding pushing it onto Donald Trump, I mean, we're going to get more and more of this. And, you know, it'd be interesting in the free speech thing that JD Vance is actually saying that we might reduce your tariffs from 10% to 5% if you make sure freedom of speech is rekindled in this country. True freedom of speech. That's what we're hearing. I'm hoping that's true. But obviously that shouldn't be really a bargaining chip, should it?
No, it really shouldn't. Howard Cox, Alex Phillips do stand by, because we've got this extraordinary story, and this is where woke really starts to eat itself, of Peter Andre being cancelled because he's played a Jamaican in a new movie. I promise you want to see this. He is faking it. He is faking it, and it's caused all sorts of outrage. So do not go anywhere, because I promise you, I promise you, it will be the funniest thing you have seen all day long. But first, we ingest a credit card's worth of microplastics every week. Tiny particles in our food, water, and air. They don't just pass through it, they build up in our organs, disrupt hormones, and are linked to fertility issues, neurological disorders, and heart disease. In early 2024, human brain samples contained 0.5% plastic by weight, with higher levels tied to Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative diseases. Microplastics have also been found in semen and placentas, correlating with lower sperm quality, fetal exposure, and declining fertility. BPA and phthalates mimic or disrupt hormones like estrogen and testosterone, leading to reduced sperm counts, irregular cycles, and development issues in children. With microplastics in bottled water, food, and even household dust, avoiding exposure is impossible. But you can support your body's ability to fight back. Moringa activates the NRFT pathway, your body's detox switch, helping flush out microplastic-associated toxins like BPA, BPS, and phthalates. This pathway boosts detox enzymes, making harmful chemicals and water soluble for easier excretion. Now, not all moringa is created equal. You know that many supplements use lower quality sources, root, bark, or contaminated powders, lacking the full spectrum of benefits. Plus, moringa naturally tastes bitter, and to be honest, it's pretty gross, which is what led me to Morning Bean by Verso, a rich, chocolatey coffee alternative packed with moringa, cocoa, polyphenols, and electrolytes to help detox, fuel energy, performance, focus, and longevity. And look, you know, I love this. I've been actually drinking it all day to try and deal with this hay fever. And it's honestly amazing. I'm not joking. It tastes like a McDonald's hot chocolate. It's that type of taste. I love a McDonald's hot chocolate. And I don't actually know how they mask the bitter notes of moringa, but it doesn't bother me because it just tastes so good. Plus, Verso only uses pure moringa leaf, the most nutrient-dense part of the plant, and conducts third-party testing on every batch to ensure potency, purity, and safety. You can't avoid microplastics, but you can support your body's detox process. Start your day with Morning Bean for research-backed detox, energy and health. Click on the link below or visit buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code outspoken for 15% off. That's buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code for a 15% discount. But now, back to the show. Okay, the woke are eating themselves, folks. Peter Andre, he's pretty woke. He's not someone who really offends, but he's just been cancelled. And he's been cancelled because he's imitating a Jamaican gangster in a brand new film, which is actually called Jafaken. So it makes it very clear he's not actually believing that he is Jamaican. He's just pretending to be a fake Jamaican, a Jafaken. But of course, it has been branded racist. He's had to delete his posts. He's been described as offensive. And we've even had some folk asking, is this 1998? Let me tell you, I wish it was. I honestly wish it was. If I could get in my time machine and just go back to 1998 before the woke mind virus destroyed this country, I would be very happy. Now, whether this is the best acting or not, you can be the judge. But should Peter Andre really be cancelled for this? Reaction from my superstar panel, Alex Phillips and Howard Cox, in just a moment. But first, here's a piece of acting that I don't think...
You want to go to Jamaica, pose as this Jamaican gangster, steal all his dough, and then hope to live. I mean, all I've got to do is learn the Jamaican accent. If you're ready for dough, we'll make to try and stop you. Here we go. But was not just a dialect. It's a way of life. An attitude.
Let them know man say that. Kill man, all right. Blup, blup.
Find him. Kill him. Bring him back to life. And then kill him again.
Now, Alex Phillips, Peter Andre is a Greek Australian. He did not black up. There was no blackface going on. He did put the dreadlocks on, right? And use the accent. Is that now enough to see you cancelled in woke society?
Of course it is, but actually I think he's played a genius move here because all of the noise and the anger about it actually has people. I had me in stitches watching that. I think it's utterly brilliant. And
I did wonder initially, Alex, if it was a spoof.
Yeah, they kind of want to see this stuff brought back because most people, realise that actually that sort of thing is actually a bit of a love song to Jamaica. It's saying you're wonderful, you've got this brilliant accent, we're going to look ridiculous trying to impersonate it, and all the Jamaicans there going, you don't know what you're doing. And people love that sort of thing. It's light-hearted, it's inoffensive, and yet there are always the people who go, you can't do that, that's cultural appropriation. I mean, those people, they're just so irrelevant now. They're a tiny, screaming minority, a bit like James O'Brien, who in another 5 years' time will find themselves in the dustbin of history. And I think Peter Andre's played a masterstroke here, because what so many people, ordinary men and women, down Weatherspoons, chatting in the staff canteen, want to see back is this sort of simple, funny comedy. And if he's brave enough to go ahead and do that, a round of applause to him, because I think he'll have a huge audience of people who go, yes, this is just what we need.
Howard Cox, how did you feel about this one?
Well, you see, I'm twice the age of you two, and I go back to people like Bernard Manning and Jim Davidson, actually pretending to be a West Indian. And obviously, every time I went to one, especially some of the rugby stag do's I used to go to and seeing stand-up comedians doing it, had us in stitches. No one was offended. And I played with a lot of West Indian cricketers and rugby players and these sorts of people, and they were laughing just as much. the issue we have here, is quite right as Alex said, is the whole aspect of what's happening in our society. A small minority of people, a rich elite minority of people, are controlling what we think, what we say, what we do, and how we operate. And that's the issue, the bottom of this. Good luck to Peter Andre. I once met him in the green room at GB News, and I sat with him drinking a cup of tea, and he cracked me up. Again, you meet it, book and cover. You just don't know the man until you sit and talk to these people. He's a good man, and I agree with Alex. That had me in stitches.
Peter Andre is actually a lovely guy. He really is. I mean, there's a whole load of horrors in the show business industry, right? Like real horrors. Trust me, I know. Peter Andre is not one of them. But the thing is, Alex, knowing Peter Andre as I do, and he's deleted all of his posts, he will have gone into this like in quite an altruistic way, and he's obviously now horrified. That's the problem here. He doesn't want to be cancelled.
Yeah, please don't be bullied, Peter Andre. Make Jafakan. I want to see it. I think most of the country wants to see it because laughter is the best medicine. It's exactly the sort of antidote we need to this woke nonsense that has been so poisonous and so oppressive and so misery-inducing in society, that's turning us into a crackpot country riddled with mental illness. This is exactly the sort of thing we need. So, Peter, please, come on, be brave. You managed to do that Mysterious Girl video. I'm not too old to remember that. Oiled up, coming out the ocean like this. I mean, that was harrowing. Yeah, he used to have that hair like that and those big earrings. I mean, that's more disturbing than this Jafakan thing. So come on, Peter, have some backbone. You know you're right. If you know you're right and you're doing things for the right reason, crack on and just do them.
Yeah, and the thing is, doesn't everyone have to stop worrying about being cancelled, Howard? Because actually it's only if everyone stops worrying. And look, we've had some great examples, right? Like, look at the trans issue that we've spoken about earlier with J.K. Rowling and Ricky Gervais and Dave Chappelle, actually. They proved that actually, and look, I know they've got so much money, they are truly uncancelable, but we can all be inspired by them. And the Loose Women should be inspired by them, and Peter Andre should be inspired by them. Like, the responsibility to change society is going to come back to a lot of the celebrity class who have to have the balls to start saying what they really think, because we have had all of this period for the past 10 years. And I saw this change. Like, I used to work at ITV Daytime. I was there for 10 years and I literally saw it change, and I had to leave as a result. So yeah, I think there's got to be a power now in celebrities actually being brave and not always being so worried that they're going to be immediately cancelled.
Well, you see, what I find is, who is orchestrating all of this? How has this happened? And it's happening at all levels. It's happening in our education scheme. We're seeing things like what's happening about LGBT stuff being taught, in primary school. Kids should be out playing, making mud pies and, just running around and enjoying themselves. But, they're having agendas now, or telling them about are you really a woman, a girl, or really a boy? Those are the sorts of things that are being dictated to. And I can't handle that at the moment. I'm a 70-year-old guy. I haven't got long left on this planet. And I probably might not even make it.
3 decades, mate. You ain't going anywhere, Howard Cox.
I probably won't make 2029, for the election. So who knows what's going on.
Don't even go there. Don't even suggest it. Alex, I just want to ask finally, though, because Howard poses a very good question. How did this happen? How did the woke mind virus so successfully infiltrate not just the entertainment industry, but politics? I mean, because we have seen this happen. We've been there watching it happen. How do you think it happened?
The money. There's an amazing American journalist called Jennifer Bilek. She is superb, and that's what she's done. She's actually found in America 2 of the biggest philanthropists who have driven billions of dollars into LGBT charities. Both of them also, surprisingly, sit on the boards of big pharmaceutical companies and .com companies who have also propagated this. But so much money has been pumped into organizations such as Stonewall, who then say to companies, well, if you don't sign up to this, that, or the other, we're going to say that you don't get our Stonewall rating. And then companies are really worried. They think, oh my goodness, the press is going to get hold of this. We're going to be in trouble. Best thing we can do is go along with it. I'm afraid, Dan, when it comes to campaigning, it takes a lot of sophistication, and a lot of sophistication requires a lot of money. And so the simple answer is the left wing have been incredibly good at making money for themselves and from themselves by pushing the narrative of cancelling the right wing. They've taken over comedy. They've taken over public services. They've taken over NGO. They've taken over the arts. I mean, they basically monopolize everything now, and they've made it, ironically, capitalistically for the left wing. They've made it very lucrative to be left wing. So when you have TV presenters who don't want to talk about the ruling in the Supreme Court, it's because they don't want to lose their earnings. You always have to follow the money. That's what's gone on here. It's been purposeful. It's been deliberate. It's been propagated by some extremely powerful individuals, and the rest of society has just blindly picked it up in sheer terror. They've drunk the Kool-Aid.
Very, very well put. And look, just to wrap up, I know you'll both want to see this. Given what we were speaking about earlier, a new Find Out Now poll just released since we've been on air, reposted by Zia Yusuf and Darren Grimes, has Reform on 28%, 6 points ahead of Labour on 22%, 8 points clear of the Tories, and getting closer, Alex. They're not there yet. They're not at the 30% yet, but getting closer. So I'm sure you'll say I told you so. But look, we will continue this debate. Thank you both so much. Brilliant. Howard Cox, the director of Fair Fuel UK, now a member of the Integrity Party, and Alex Phillips, who, of course, has her incredible That's What She Said Substack as an independent journalist. Thank you both so much. Now, lots of feedback coming in from you, not surprisingly today, with everything that we have been discussing. Jay posted, I know this is unpopular, however, I personally don't trust Ben Habib. Don't really know why, but strong gut instinct that he's a wily fox in sheep's clothing. Avtomat said 4774. If the Tories can be taken over by proper right-wingers, that's the best outcome. Then all the party infrastructure comes inside rather than becoming another enemy to be overcome. Susie Perry said the UK is finished. There is no one capable of saving it apart from Rupert Lowe, but he's finished now too. I say just accept reality. It's time to emigrate. No, Susie, but I hear what you're saying. Snake Tree says Zia will take over the Reform Party. And Pom said 4 years to go. Maybe they get rid of Zia and get Rupert back. Nige can't be that dumb to keep promoting Zia. And as I reported in my digest, I am told Zia will be out at some point, which is really, really fascinating. Okay. Oh my goodness, my hay fever. I'm almost getting through this. It's been difficult today. I've been sneezing, but at least you haven't heard it. Union Jackass time. Your nominees. Prince Harry, nominated by Fire Songwell, and it is for his ridiculous hair and also his ridiculous lawsuits and his ridiculous barrister, Mr. Sherborne. We had India Willoughby, nominated by Amaze Lily, because she's still complaining. Just see his posts on X. And Jess Phillips, nominated by Warning Shout. If she did her job properly, the country would be a calmer place. And the results are in. You've been voting live. Third place, Prince Harry with 17% of the vote. The runner-up, India Willoughby, with 26% of the vote. But the overwhelming winner of Union Jackass today with 57% of your vote, Jess Phillips. Okay, they all go head-to-head now, not Prince Harry and India Willoughby, but the winners of Union Jackass all this week go head-to-head on the posts community section of my YouTube page. This is where we have the massive vote to find out the worst Britain in the world this week. So head-to-head this week, you've got from today, Jess Phillips, from Wednesday, Dr. Scholler, from Tuesday, Karen Bradley, and from Monday, Ed Miliband. Greatest Britain, though, nominated by our very own Darren Donaldson of the Dan Wootton Outspoken Club, and it's J.K. Rowling in reference to that picture, that brilliant celebration cigar picture. And he says, what a photo, what a journey, what a woman. Speaking of amazing women, she's standing by right now. Lady Colin Campbell is with me for the Uncancelled Aftershow on Substack. Huge amounts of royal news to talk about. www.outspoken.live if you want to join. We're back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, hit subscribe. I'm just going to go and try and hibernate and get this hay fever sorted by tomorrow. But most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.